people will hate me for saying this, but I think at the end of the day, effort is an abstraction layer on time. The time constraint exists, is there. You do sprints, are 2-week sprints, you do commitments on the roadmap, it's commitments on the roadmap, you're saying you're going to add value on X amount of time, and that's a time constraint. So
yes,
it's always about time.
Maybe next sprint we'll meet the need, but for now it's just another feed.
Hello and welcome to Maybe Next Sprint. This is our third episode. I am Enrico, a senior SRE infrastructure manager, and I have Pablo with me. That's an engineering and product manager. And every time we're gonna shift a little his title, so maybe at some point he will get something he likes. Who knows?
If I find something, yeah, for sure.
So today we want to discuss about estimations and story points. It's a question I got very, very often. People that don't understand why, don't understand how, and people that like them, that don't like them. Sometimes you use t-shirts, sometimes you use numbers. So why do we do estimations?
Yeah, that's a really tricky and interesting question. But let's try to figure out together. I'll say we can split between, let's say, two complete different or aspects on why we do estimations. For the first line, as let's say, internal needs, as in pod or team needs in terms of understanding how you are performing, which is your predictability scope, and something where you can start working towards improving yourself and your team towards. And the other is the logical one, is if you're investing money, you want to know where that money goes and how this will become an asset in time, right? So let's call that middle and upper management information sharing or context sharing. Reporting, let's say reporting, because at the end of the day it's reporting. Now, I think the question here would be, can we not do it? And
can we skip it completely? Maybe. Well, it's something that, and I guess that any other engineering field cannot skip. If you need to build anything or mostly do any job, you cannot say, I don't know how long will it take, we'll see. Even though in a lot of situations you get estimations and those estimations are not true. Like, that's very true, I would say, for every other engineering field.
Yeah,
let's if you look at the works outside my building, they're supposedly to be finished end of the month, and everybody know they're not going to finish for whatever reason. And on the other hand, if they say we are going to work for 6 months instead of 1, people will be 6 times more pissed that the street will be closed for 6 months. So I guess that's also true in software development. You need estimation because at some point you cannot always say it will take 10 times the amount of time it takes. And I would say you also need to organize the work. So why do we do it? To keep our work organized, more or less.
Let's say, to be completely honest, I've never been into an organization where estimations were something not done in many different ways, but it always existed, right? So to give you some context, for example, roadmap creation. You might not use story points or t-shirt sizing, but you are generating a commitment of some value, whatever that means, into some time frame, right? And then you need to scale that down into activities, and then you need to understand if all those activities to reach that point make sense in the time constraint, because everything has a time constraint, right?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, you are estimating.
but then when we talk about estimations for a ticket, for a sprint, for sure we're not talking about deadlines. So I think it's interesting, as we drilling down into the topic, to maybe start with the broader frame. So to do estimation decently, you need to be in an environment where you have a roadmap and a deadline, potentially.
I don't think that will make you do proper estimations. But it put the purpose on in front of you, right? So on a general concept, at least if you know that there are time constraints, there is a roadmap, it's clear, you need to add this feature, and it's clear, and to build this feature you need X amount of activities. You have the whole context, and it's easier to understand why you are estimating, right? If that makes you do right or proper estimations or not, I think that's a little bit different. It takes into account many other things, proper estimations. To start with, understanding what you are estimating. So this is understand the code you are talking about, understand how you're going to build whatever the ticket is asking you to build, QA, design,
so
many other things, right?
Let's go a little more practical then. What is the time or the place where you do estimations? Of course, the easy guess is you want to do them before you plan for your sprint. Otherwise, it's gonna be a mess. So it's gonna be before your sprint planning. And how would you go for estimating? Let's keep it simple. A ticket.
Yes, this is a continuous activity that, if you want to frame it, you will dedicate a specific amount of time on refinements, for sure. You will dedicate a specific amount of time on plannings, but then it's a never-ending activity. It could be daily. It could be, depends on how you organize your teams, right? But let's assume the standard way that it should be PM or go.
Wait, when you see continuous, that's continuous on your entire backlog and work stream. It's not
Correct.
continuous on a single ticket. A single ticket, at some point you put an estimation and you
No. Yeah, on a single. Yeah,
you stick
correct.
on that.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so let's follow this single ticket.
Okay.
It get picked from the backlog. We don't know how. We don't care. It get picked up and it's like, okay, we want to do this. Let's estimate how long will it take, or what is the effort? Because we haven't mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, let's add that.
What are we estimating first?
Yeah. So yes, once you know, let's talk about a good practice, not deep practice, but a good practice would be, you are running on a sprint. So while you are executing that sprint, you start working on next sprint backlog, right? So you start refining the tickets that you want to put into the next sprint. By that, most likely you do the refinement meeting. On the refinement meeting, you can either exactly what you're talking about and how you're going to build it, and you can give an accurate estimation, or you can go like guesstimation, putting some amount of effort. Let's discuss that later. And then in between the refinement and the planning, you do your research, or your team do the research to get that into a real effective number by the time the planning runs. So you adjust the numbers on the planning, understanding now better what's the context, what's going to get impacted, and so on. So those
Okay,
are the
and
two big scenarios where
and who do you want in the room when you work on this?
the team as in the PM. Let's talk on the beginning. That is the refinement. You want the PM to present ticket.
The problem. Hmm.
We talk about this specific ticket. The ticket, context, reasoning, explanation,
Hmm.
and you want the other part of the team, as in developers, QAs, and designers, product design, listening, understanding, and guesstimating, or giving a sharp estimation if they know what it is. That will depend on the whole discussion around the ticket. If the ticket is understandable, good size, executable, the smart and all that concepts. And then you hold the team accountable on saying, okay, if this is it, now go find yourself, discuss in between each other or whatever. And by the time you came to the planning, you know exactly what it needs to be done. So you give me an accurate number.
Okay.
Then there is many strategies. I think they are old-fashioned, pucker planning, whatever. So, but this is for another topic.
That's on how you get to agree on a number. Like,
yeah, to avoid bias and
Okay.
these kind of things. But
you can read about them on the internet, I guess. I used to do poker planning. It's fun.
Scrum.org.
It's fun. I used to do poker planning. I think it's fun.
This is related to the previous sprint that we had. It depends a lot on the maturity of the team. That depends. Yeah.
So how do you get to an estimation? We do these meetings. Somebody potentially will have to do some research and then come back to the team, and everybody needs to agree that the estimated amount is correct.
I think at some point it has to be a bit different on, let's say, SRE cloud infrastructure /
Yes, we are
because
getting
it's
into
more
that.
on demand
Yeah.
kind of thing, right?
I think it's interesting to get into the differences after we discuss the elephant here, like
Okay.
what are
Here
we
we go.
estimating? I can introduce the point saying that you can mostly estimate two things: time or effort. And there are pros and cons in both. For my limited knowledge, software engineering is maybe the only engineering field where you try not to estimate time. I would say maybe because we are the cheapest of the engineering, or one of the, or at least you can most of the time afford to be pretty much wrong on your estimation. If you're building a bridge, you can't, or I mean, it's gonna be more complex. And for my experience, estimating time is harder than estimating effort. But there is this continuous loop of people will try to push you on going back or link your estimation to time.
Yes, I think people will hate me for saying this, but I think at the end of the day, it's an abstraction. Effort is an abstraction layer on time. The time constraint exists, is there. You do sprints, are 2-week sprints. You do commitments on the roadmap. It's commitments on the roadmap. You're saying you're going to add value on X amount of time, and that's a time constraint. So
yes,
it's always about time. The thing here, the thing here is you build this layer of abstraction So not to confuse people around, or not to commit to a sharp
So to
unknown.
confuse people around.
Yes, that's another way to say it. But you want to do that because otherwise it will be an endless discussion around hitting targets on time that you cannot. There is no way for you to unforeseen previously. Like, let's say you're gonna do something in 3 days, 4 days, that you are 17% on the understanding, because at the end you start executing and then there are some things that might change on time. You do some small refactor, you take a little bit more time on QA or whatever. This is unknowns, known unknowns that you want to include in there. If you are building a bridge and you have been doing bridges for ages, you know exactly what it takes. Unless
Maybe.
somebody, I don't know,
Yeah, it would be interesting to ask a
raining and
bridge engineer about this.
But then constructions, in the construction itself is the one that probably hits the lower amount of deadlines, because they always miss the deadline 100% of the time. Even in project management trainings, when you talk about how you build this, it's like, if you go construction, double the time. It's like, okay, well, based on what? Because they always miss. So doing that and nothing is exactly the same. So this abstraction layer try to avoid that and have like a single source of truth in communication. And then it's like, yeah, it's between 3-5 days, So you get in that flexibility. And I think that's exactly why it exists.
Another value that I got from not estimating time is if you estimate time, people will always find ways to push you on when to do it. If you tell somebody is half a day, it's 3 days, it's 2 days, they will just watch the calendar and be, oh, so it can be done before Friday.
Yes.
Because they can count the amount of time between now and whatever is the amount of time you put on the ticket. Having having whatever else, I guess we can go with story points. Will make this technically impossible, because you will have to convert the story points to an amount of time, but that conversion can always be discussed. So you can say, okay, it's a 3 point, it's simple, it's easy, maybe it can be done before this week, but then if it takes 4 days, you are still fine. That, I would say, it's true for my experience up to a certain degree. But I would say then you get into the problem of protecting the team in the sprint from this kind of external pressure, and maybe that can be another conversation. But okay, so let's go back to estimations.
Let me say, today I'm too much into PMBOK, but sorry for that. But you have, this is stupid, but you have the triangle, the classic triangle of time, scope, and money, right? When you're building product, you have money locked, time locked. You play with the scope. Now, how you play with the scope? You business value. Mm-hmm. So you are committed to add a business value, specific business value on some vertical of your product by X amount of time. But you are never saying exactly what you are delivering in there, right? The features, the small tickets. So you play with that. Now, doing this story point kind of thing, or this abstraction layer, it allows you to play a lot in the small room on how you are building that, to translate that into a roadmap with business value. If you go time, exact time, then you are talking an exact ticket value, and then that became upstream a problem because discussions, because agreements, because many other things. So I think at the end of the day, it's a good tool to get this abstraction, not just to, lie the system or, fake the system. It's to avoid confusions, to make people playing in the same at the same level. So I won't go against this kind of effort estimations. We can discuss in which way and.
I mean, is there a place where you can work completely without estimations? Maybe there are other systems, but at that point you might not be doing sprints. So you're doing a completely different work organization, like the were examples here and there. We are not even talking Kanban probably. Yeah, the problem with estimations, and that's why I want to go back on a little more details on how you do them, is that is also an incredibly useful tool to decide if a ticket is feasible. And that's where I can link on SRE work. Often estimating a ticket is the time where the team discusses how they expect the ticket to be done. And given that usually there are very different level of experience, or at least fields of experience, of expertise, people will have very strong opinions on how to do it. And that's where the place where maybe you can get an agreement on, okay, we can do it in this and this and this and that way, so it will take this amount of effort. But in a lot of situation, it was the place where we were just not in agreement on how to do it, and because of that, on what will be the effort. And so often we decided to split. So when you start estimating a ticket and you realize, is it either too big, or there are too many things that need to interact, or too many things we don't know, or legacy stuff, whatever, that's where you decide to split. That's where you decide to go back to refinement or whatever it is. I mean, it might be close to what you said, that sometimes you need to do research to put a good estimation. But yeah, if you put days, that might be harder, because if you put days, that's I think the conversation will not necessarily be as good as deciding effort, because that's the other problem. The amount of time that I need to do something, it might be different from me to you, because maybe it's a system that I use every day. It's a part of an application that I use to code every day. So for me, it's faster, not because it's a smaller effort. It's just that I know how to do it, because I did it recently. And that's where the estimation can also help, instead of just saying it's half a day, it's 1 day.
Yeah, and I was thinking scenarios where estimating might not be something. It's hard to tell, but I guess when doing maintenance, kind of, if you go maintenance mode, it's more first in, first out, usually priority in terms of urgency kind of thing. Then estimations are not really a thing in there.
Yeah,
But
support also.
Support, you don't need that. But when you're building something, in some way, you want some kind of estimation. Now, there are some pitfalls there. If you're going to take more time to do estimations than executing the task itself, then probably you need to find a better way to estimate it, or a quicker or fast way to do it. Another classic pitfall is management using story points in the reporting way to, I don't know, get some I don't want to say comparison, let's say, comparison between teams, between, I think this kind of metrics, estimating tickets are more internal team only thing that won't tell a lot of big stories upstream, except that that the team itself it's delivering what it's committed to deliver, let's say on a sprint, on a iteration, whatever that means, and they are delivering the value that they are committed. Then how they do it is because they know internally by doing estimations. Now you can trust on those and go upstream, right?
Don't share your numbers outside of your team.
Yeah, I mean you
don't
can share, but don't use it in the wrong way. That's not a
because
metric.
if you share, people will start to compare. So
Yeah.
two teams that why you're delivering 30 a sprint instead of 50 a sprint or whatever.
Yeah.
It's I would say it's the same as counting lines of codes as
Yeah, exactly.
as
Exact
a
same thing.
value,
It's like what value is in
metric.
there. Correct.
Okay.
So these are some pitfalls. But on the other side, again, I think at least if it triggers a conversation around what is need to be done, that's enough.
Okay.
So communication-wise, it's useful even.
Let's say we have done our estimation. We have put all our stuff into the sprint. We know because we have read the books that we can see the previous performances to decide how many points we can put in each sprint. And that's another maybe big point, but whatever. Let's say we do that. And now we are at the end of the sprint, and as Scrum dictates, every time, every day, we do a retro. So are we on track or not on track on our global estimations? Let's say from the sprint estimation, so the total, and then if you're on track, well, good for you. You don't need any of this. You're better than us. If you are not, most probably you are
They're
not.
better than almost everyone.
Yeah. So if you are on track, well, good job. You lied, I guess. Because on track is not under or over. It's just precise,
correct.
50 points, whatever, delivered the night. I think somebody's lying. Somebody's under.
I've seen some unicorns on my career, but I think it was imaginary.
Yeah, it's like all the 3 points are marked as 15, and then there is a lot of YouTube and table fast, but
Yes.
I don't know how it's called in English. So yeah, we're precise at time. Of course, there are two cases. The decent one, either you put not enough work in your sprint, and I'm gonna spoil the result. You put more. That's it. That's an easy solution. That's a good problem to have. You didn't plan enough, and so at some point in the sprint is like, yeah, whatever. We add a new thing. Of course, if that happens every time, maybe you need to have a conversation with your PM. It's like, okay, guys, let's put one more. I don't know. I would say the real problems are there when you are overestimating every time. So, what do we do there?
Okay.
What can be done in a more or less structured way to understand and I'm not saying fixing the problem, but handle the issue of every sprint is not on target.
Okay, let me say a couple of things here. First of all, estimations and sprint backlog and 2-week sprint and all these things are to keep the team on track or on something you're working on. So if you're missing the sprint by a ticket or two,
no, but who cares?
You are still going the right direction. And this is exactly the purpose of this. Now, if you are going half the way,
Mhm.
and you go 1 sprint, 2 sprints, 3 sprints, and nothing changes, then you have a people's problem.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I would
You are
say
not having the right
if you're doing a 50
communication.
points, the problem is not 5 points. Is
Correct.
you're missing 20, 30
Yeah,
points
yeah.
each sprint. Yes.
And this is true on both sides. It's not that if you're falling short, you add, and that's perfectly fine if you're falling short for half. Because when you are adding, you are not just adding, okay, let's add 1 ticket and we keep rolling. That's fine.
Mhm.
But assuming you're preparing sprints, backlogs, and understanding the commitment of each sprint, you are completely out of control. So you are adding tickets that are not perfectly well defined or refined and estimate.
Okay.
You are adding a lot of things that you were not thinking about on the proper pace, right? So problems start to appear in there. If you are falling short, you are falling long, and you miss the target by half, then you have of course, a huge problem. You're lying the system. You're committing to something you cannot deliver. That's perfectly fine for the book, and it's quite accurate in the execution, because I've been there many times. 3 sprints. You need 3 sprints to adjust your numbers, at least to understand 20% off. Within 3 sprints, and you keep losing by far, you have a problem that you have to pay attention really fast and accurate, and you use retrospective for that. What are we missing? Why we are not hitting? Maybe it's a problem of the system itself. Nobody understands the system, and they are guessing. If you are estimating by guessing, you are doing something wrong, and this is the usual problem, right?
Yes. Okay. But then how do you do? Like, that means you need to estimate only by comparing to something you've done in the past. But
We go previous sprint that we talk about documentation and how you know the system, and then you figure out how you will understand this, and then you came back to do proper estimations.
Okay. My experience here was to have tickets that were just about exploration, and that were a mess to put in a sprint, because so that's where the estimation was not a real estimation, was more an expiration or deadline. So we were saying, okay, this is the thing we need to do. We don't know how it can be done. So we need, I mean, we cannot put a number. So the only reasonable thing to do for us was, okay, we need to explore possible solutions, but then, you start exploring. When do you stop? So we were using it, and that's where you want to put an estimation, not really an estimation, but we I remember we kind of forced the system. It was not a good solution, but we were like, okay, so we do research for a couple of weeks, so for a sprint, but in the meantime you should also churn some other work, because otherwise it means you have one person that's out of the sprint. And I'm just saying this because we didn't have a good solution. I think that if I have to do that again today, I would just decide that that person is out of the sprint, and so potentially I remove the amount of story points that's assigned to the sprint by the fraction of the person leaving, and I'm like, okay, take your 1 week, 2 week, whatever, 3 weeks, and work on that. It might be just more reasonable, because yeah.
Let me tell you how I did it on product. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but this is the way I did it a couple of times in the past. if there is an unknown thing, ticket, or whatever feature that you don't know exactly how to estimate because you don't know the system or whatever, you put a spike, time constraint spike on the sprint, time constraint. So let's say you're gonna dedicate abstraction layer 5 points on this spike. So you have not time, effort constraint. Then you put your effort in investigating. It could be one person, the whole team, whatever it takes, to understand what is it about, and then you can do the refinement and the planning on the better know. If you fail, you have two options. One is you add another spike, and you keep delaying this development, or you reassess what's the value in it, because this is building value. So you are adding money to the problem, right? So you need to really understand this is the right way. This is what we want to do.
No, that fully resonates with me. But what didn't work for me when we were exactly doing this, we were calling them explorations, the same stuff.
Yeah.
The thing is, assign an effort to something that will just take time. It was almost useless. Like we were using story points as time at that point, because we were like, okay, so we say it's a 5 point. For us, 5 point is 1 day. So 1 today max. But at the point is like, okay, then why just not saying we have 2 days less of this person in the sprint?
Okay, that's a good point, and I can give you my reasoning behind that. You are not just counting time, you're counting effort, and I give you some examples. I've seen many times putting a spike that ends up with the PR of the ticket itself.
Okay.
So you do the discovery, you understand, oh, this is quite easy, I can do this and that, I put it on the spike, okay, just kill the ticket, kind of thing, because it's easy. Or you put the time, you put the effort to understand the system, you improve the documentation, you improve the knowledge, you add value on the ticket and explaining how it works, then it's not coding, but it's value. So if you put in the context of value, saying, we need to understand how this works, at the end of the day, it's like value for the team, not business value, but value for the team, saying, okay, now we know how this works. So I think it's effort. It's not like, okay, I'm going to spend time and look at the watch, and by the time passes, and okay, I don't know. I think you have activities in there. Improve documentation. Okay. Maybe you can review the code and add some, I don't know, refactoring, whatever. From the spike, you can relate many other things as outcome of that. So for me, it's part of an effort. You do time constraint because if it takes the whole sprint, it's a big value that you're not counting on. So you do like reverse engineer there. You put how much it will take, and then you invest that effort into that. And then you say, okay, I'm far from understanding, or I'm close to, then it's, negotiation is a little bit more, a little less. Don't break this.
I hope that didn't break the entire sound.
No. We're still alive.
Okay. I think there is one last small bit that might be interesting to cover before closing. That is a detail on estimations. So when we talk estimations on a ticket, and therefore when we talk tickets in a sprint, how do you manage the split, if any, of the ticket on multiple people? For example, to make it simple, you will have different skill set in your team most of the time. I would say teams of full stack engineers are rare. And so if we keep it easy on front back QA, how do you manage the people assignment and people workload in a sprint when you do the planning, just based on your estimations, given that you cannot have, I mean, it would be crazy to have a ticket with 3 different estimation, one per I don't know, sub team or whatever. How do you manage that complication? And I would say that's super interesting to hear from your side, because on my side, on SRE, that's maybe one of the most complex things, because sometimes you have people in the team that are not able to work on some subsystems, and but then everybody has the same title. So when you put everything together, it's hard to say, oh, but this can only be done by this person. That's this person. Then you're at that point not doing sprints anymore. You're just assigning work. You're just waterfalling.
Yeah, I think on this particular case, it's true that it's quite different from let's say your side versus product life cycle. My answer would be you don't manage that. It's not on you to manage that. It's on the team to decide whether they can do X amount of work as a team. It doesn't matter the roles itself. Yeah, of course, you want backends to do backend and frontends to do frontend, right? And QA do QA and product designers do product design. But that shouldn't be managed by anyone. It's just the team saying, this is my capacity, this is how much work I can take, and that's it.
Okay, then if we go back to our ideal
and I'll give you a stupid example.
Okay.
Shall we stop the whole team on a sprint because the QA is on holidays?
Yes. Why QA is on holidays? They should not be allowed to have holidays.
That's another. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I get your point. Yeah, you win.
That's
yeah,
it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Negate the QA holidays. No, QA people, we love you.
Yeah.
Definitely cannot do your job at all. And no, but I mean, that's an extreme. But without going to the extreme, you have an entire part of the team of that. I can tell you, how do we solve it in SRE? We don't.
Right.
We plan holidays usually way too long in advance in order to have 1+ or n+ people always on deck, because you know that there is no possibility of all the team is on holiday, then thing explodes. But in let's say day-to-day standard situation, when that means if you take your ticket and it's like, okay, this feature, it will take me as a developer 3 points to be developed. But then you have your QA saying, oh, but that's impossible to test. How do you do that? You split the ticket?
No.
You keep it one?
So yeah, the ticket has a value by itself. You split it in case you understand that it's too big to execute, but you don't split it because of specific knowledge on specific people, right? And this is probably one of the hardest things to do on a daily basis on a development life cycle, is splitting tickets and keeping value on them. But once the team understands how to do it, it's like really straightforward. But it takes ages until this start working effectively. Now, you don't. The whole poker planning that you love and those things are meant for this. It's because you don't want to bias a developer against a QA. You want the QA to come up saying, okay, this might be 2 lines of code, but I need 5 days or creating a lot of test cases or whatever to be sure that this is not breaking anything else or whatever. So
Okay,
at
so
the
you
end of
put
the
your
day,
estimation on the heavier side. Whoever he has the heavier side, you put the estimation there.
at the end of the day, the whole team agrees on a number of estimations, saying like, okay, I don't care. I mean, it might be, I don't know, half an hour of me putting some lines of code here, 2 hours of my partner doing front end there, and then 3 days of QA. Okay, this ticket is 8 points, whatever. But it's an agreement of all the involved people, because you don't do handover of a ticket on the sprint. And that's another sprint. But you work on the ticket. The team work on the ticket. You don't just drop it somewhere, somebody else's hands. That's a general
Okay,
concept.
I would say that's a controversial point.
Yes. But we are talking a lot of good practicing here, not
Yes.
not just
So,
estimation.
so you put in the estimation. Your estimation need to be the sum somehow of all the effort of all the different people and skill set involved.
No, you don't sum efforts, because you don't do handover again. You just decide on how you're gonna tackle the whole team and say, okay, we do it in 5 points, whatever. That's
Okay.
You look it as a whole. You don't look it as an individual effort.
Okay.
Then the discussion between the team might be on individual efforts, but the estimation is as a whole. It's like,
And then when you do the planning, it means the team needs to be sharp on seeing how much work will be distributed on everybody in order to say if that's reasonable or not.
you see it as a whole, same thing. I mean, you have a pace. Let's go back to estimations. You have a pace. You know that the team can perform around 50, 60 points. You keep that pace. You do retros to try to improve a little bit that pace and go beyond 60, whatever. But how you build those 60 points, it's up to the whole team to decide. I mean, you have a bunch of tickets, you have a sprint backlog that was agreed that we can execute this whole thing all together in this time constraint that is the sprint. If it's 80% QA, 20% front end, whatever, that's up to the team to decide how they're going to work on those tickets. If backend will do front end, if front end will do backend, if both will do QA, if QA will start creating these are all discussions that we should have here on this podcast, because it's a lot of good practices and stuff. But to be short, it's up to the team to decide how they're going to perform it.
Okay, so you're not going to use your estimations and retros on your estimations as a tool also to understand the distribution of load across your people, because that's an information that you will not have.
No, ideally no. Good practices. I've seen a lot of places where you like, okay, backend can do 15, frontend can do 10, and I don't comply with that approach. So, yeah.
Okay, and you think that's worse? That if you do per skill set estimation, in the end, the quality of your work is going to be reduced.
Come
Or
again?
why you don't like it? Why you don't like to split?
I don't like it because it's not natural. It's like, let's translate this into, I don't know, a basketball team. I like basketball. You don't put a guy saying, oh, you need to do 5 blocks, and this has to do 30 points, and this other has to steal 3 balls. You need to play as a whole team. And this is exactly the same thing. There might be, again, from start of a junior team recently built until a high-performing team, there might be a lot of agreements to do across the line, and you can even start doing backend or whatever, front and backend or whatever. But in the long run, you don't want that. You want a commitment from the team that they can deliver and work together, do pair programming, do front end and back end at the same time, do shift left in QA. I don't know, many strategies that you want there to happen. So you don't split. Because if you split, you are just making life simple, but you're not optimizing the system. That's my guessing around the topic. Never seen this happening. No, shocking. But yeah.
Cool. So to wrap, if we can summarize all the discussion, you do estimations using an abstractions in order to protect your team and to avoid the pitfall of having people pushing deadlines on you inside your sprint. Never ever share your numbers outside of your team. Everybody knows that cannot happen. People will see the amount of points in your Jira, but for sure, do not compare them.
Give the
across
right
different
metrics
teams.
across the board so they can
Yes.
monitor properly, not just.
And but use your own numbers to compare against yourself. So the maybe most important use of estimations is to compare against yourself of the past. When you estimate a ticket, estimate total value and effort for the total value. Do not split, and hope that your team is able to distribute the workload and have a good guess on how much can be done in the sprint.
And let me add this one. If someone that is watching us or listening to us had the experience of not estimating, please let us know and explain
yes,
how
we
they
want to
did
know.
it, because I've never seen that happening. So it will be
I
glad
would love to skip estimations.
Okay, can we close this sprint?
Yes. See you
Okay.
maybe next sprint then.
See you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Ciao.
Maybe next sprint we'll find the joy